Hello friends! In continuation of the G100 inverter training videos from LS brand, today we want to talk about another feature of this inverter together. Well, the feature we want to discuss today is frequency hold by analog input. So, what does this feature mean? If we provide frequency to the inverter through the analog inputs, to give frequency to the inverter. For example, we want to supply frequency to the inverter through an analog input voltage of 0 to 10 volts. If, for instance, there is noise in our environment, this will cause the inverter's input voltage, the same 0 to 10 V, coming to the analog input to be affected. It will fluctuate, meaning it will increase and decrease, and that the frequency value we set will no longer be displayed on the inverter screen. What should we do? For example, if we want to give 5V to the inverter and set our frequency to 25 Hz, it should remain exactly at that value and not fluctuate. We use this analog hold feature or hold by analog input. How does it work? If in the FRQ parameter of the G100 inverter, you set your frequency reference input to V1, meaning the analog voltage input, if we assign one of our digital inputs from P1 to P5, which correspond to IN65 to IN69, to the value 21, if this digital input that we've configured is activated, no matter how much your analog input value from 0 to 10 volts changes, the frequency you've set on the inverter will no longer change. This means that even if there is noise in your system that tries to change the 0 to 10 volt value, the inverter, thanks to the digital input you've activated, will recognize that the frequency should now remain constant and that noise will no longer have any effect on your system. So that covers the analog hold feature as well. But the example we want to work through together in this tutorial video is that we want to set one of our digital inputs, for example, the PC input, to function as a hold. That is, we set parameters 67 to 21 and set our frequency reference through the analog voltage input. That is, we supply a 0 to 10 volt signal to the inverter, and after activating the analog hold, we'll see that changing this analog input value no longer changes the inverter's frequency. Let's go to the equipment and test all the settings we've learned together. So, as we said, in order to activate the analog hold feature on the G100 inverter, we need to set one of our digital inputs, whichever we choose, to the value 21. Here, I want to use the digital input P3. I go to group in parameter number 67, which is related to the P3 digital input, and set it to the value 21. Now my P3 digital input is defined as analog hold. Now the digital input is inactive, okay, and my frequency reference is set to 2. My frequency reference is through a potentiometer and 10 volts voltage. Now if I adjust my potentiometer, you can see that my frequency value changes. For example, now I want to set this to, I want the frequency to be 20. No matter how much this voltage value increases or decreases, if I don't want my frequency value to change, that is, if I don't want noise to affect my system, what should I do? Now, I activate the digital input that has been defined as analog hold. So now, if my voltage value changes, meaning if my potentiometer changes, my frequency shouldn't change. Now I'm increasing and decreasing its value. You can see that by increasing and decreasing this potentiometer, since my digital analog hold input is active, my inverter's frequency doesn't change. That means no noise can affect my system.